Mr. Chairman, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I bring you greetings from my President, His Excellency Dr. Ernest Bai Koroma, the government and people of Sierra Leone. I thank the Institute for Cultural Diplomacy, ICD, for inviting me to make a statement at this International Economic Congress 2014. I consider this a great opportunity for a small country like Sierra Leone to participate in this all-important forum. It is a great honor to be able to share my views and our experience in Sierra Leone as we consider global trends in creative economies, education, entrepreneurship, and tourism as drivers of sustainable growth. According to the Creative Economy Report 2008, and I quote, "Nowadays, in the most advanced countries, the creative industries are emerging as a strategic choice for reinvigorating economic growth, employment, and social cohesion. And the so-called creative cities are proliferating in Europe and North America, revitalizing the economy of urban centers through cultural and social development, offering attractive jobs, particularly to young people. The turnover of the European creative industries amounted to 654 billion euros in 2003, growing 12.3% faster than the overall economy of the European Union and employing over 5.6 million people," end of quote. The creative industries are the drivers of the creative economy. While the impact of this sector has in the past been felt mainly in developed countries, some developing countries, particularly in Asia, have begun reaping the benefits of this sector. Unfortunately, in Africa and in countries like my own, not much has been done so far to harness the potential of the creative economy. Mr. Chairman, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I believe that the creative industries represent an essential tool for finding solutions to not only economic growth issues, but also social problems in developing and least developed countries. Therefore, developing the creative economy of these countries will have an impact on the reduction of poverty and inequalities, while at the same time enhancing social cohesion. And I believe countries like mine, which experience a devastating civil war, are most in need of the benefits the creative economy can provide. The story of the economies of most developing and least developed countries is generally one of exploitation of mineral and other natural resources. Unfortunately, experience has shown that this has not positively impacted on the livelihood of the local people, nor has it promoted inclusive growth. There is now, however, a general awakening to the need for alternative economic activity, hence the attractiveness of the creative industries, which by their very nature are attractive to young people who form the majority of the people in the developing world. Along with creativity, entrepreneurship is essential for the successful development of the creative economy. Entrepreneurship puts innovation into action. It is what weaves together the bits and strings of ideas to create new products, market, and to build new jobs. Unfortunately, my country, like most other countries that were under the British colonial domination for a significant part of their history, inherited an education system that was based on a grammar school type of education, training citizens mainly for jobs in the civil service and what we are considered the important professions like engineering and medicine. Since we gained independence over half a century ago, not much political attention had been paid to refocusing the education sector, particularly in the area of creativity and entrepreneurship. Recently, however, There has been a recognition of the importance of short refocusing, and work has already commenced in this regard with an ongoing review of the education sector. Other developing countries are far ahead of Sierra Leone in this regard. There is now a growing belief that the education system should expose our children and young people to as wide a spectrum of professions as possible and should develop their creative abilities. So, for example, rather than just teaching tailoring, we will expand the system to include fashion design. It is also now generally accepted that for creativity to flourish, intellectual property rights have to be protected in order to ensure that individuals and groups can reap the financial benefits of their work. Without this being guaranteed, the creative economy cannot develop or be sustained. Mr. Chairman, Sierra Leone, until recently, had an archaic and weak copyright law that was incapable of providing effective protection of intellectual property rights. However, in 2011, a new Copyright Act was passed into law that makes provision for, among other things, the establishment of a collection society that will act on behalf of rights owners to ensure they can reap the economic benefits that flow from their creative endeavors. Action is now ongoing to ensure the new law is effectively enforced. The UN Creative Economy Report 2010 says, and I quote, "The cultural sector contributes to tourism through the demand for visits to cultural heritage sites, festivals, museums, and galleries, as well as music, dance, theater, opera performances, etc. More recently, the cultural ambience and traditions of different locations can be an attraction for tourists, especially for those classified as cultural tourists, who are more discriminating and culturally aware than the so-called mass tourists." End of quote. This is why in Sierra Leone, as we work on rebranding and expanding our tourism sector after 11 years of civil war that ended in 2002, we are focusing on heritage and nature rather than mass tourism. It is with this in view that we are working on developing a number of heritage and nature sites to world-class tourist attractions, and have already recently succeeded in having a number of short sites being placed on UNESCO's tentative World Heritage Site list. We hope that when these sites are fully developed and accepted as World Heritage Sites, they will attract large enough number of visitors that will boost our creative economy. Another area in which Sierra Leone seems to be on the right track in relation to the development of our creative economy is in the area of information and communication technology, ICT. Part of the 6th of the 10 key messages that emerged from the Creative Economy Report 2010 says, and I quote, "Developing countries are lagging in terms of broadband connectivity." For the creative industries, this is a constraint because many applications to stimulate creative production and e-business do not run without sufficient bandwidth. Therefore, national and regional investment efforts should be guided in collaboration with international agencies towards better infrastructure for broadband in the South, end of quote. In order to improve broadband connectivity, Sierra Leone, with support from the World Bank, recently landed the fiber optic cable in the country as part of the Africa Coast to Europe ACE project. The Sierra Leone Cable Company, SALCAB, was officially launched in February last year, and that marked the beginning of the rollout process of improved broadband access in the country, which I believe will impact significantly on the growth of our creative economy. Sierra Leone, like many other developing and least developed countries, has in the past not had a coherent cultural policy in place to guide the cultural sector. For virtually 2 decades, we struggled to put one in place. Thankfully, we now have one, which we are in the process of launching and popularizing while at the same time establishing a National Council for Arts and Culture as stipulated in the policy, which will guide the preservation and development of our cultural heritage. In conclusion, however, I must state that even though I have outlined some measures already in place or in progress that will enhance my country's capacity to develop and benefit from its creative economy, Sierra Leone, like most other least developed countries, faces huge challenges ranging from policy gaps, weak capacities, inadequate infrastructure, lack of access to finance, etc. In order to address some of the aforementioned challenges, we propose to do the following. 1, establish an interministerial task force that will develop policies and guide their implementation in the quest to develop our creative economy. 2, follow through on the practical implementation of the Copyright Act 2011 by facilitating the establishment and functionality of the collection societies stipulated in the Act and ensuring that our law enforcement agencies have the capacity to enforce the provisions of the Act. 3, work with the Sierra Leone Investment and Export Promotion Agency, SLIPA, to identify and develop local and international market for our creative industry products. 4, identify sources of financing for the creative industries and provide capacity building for industry players to ensure that they have the business management skills necessary to have sustainable business enterprises. The focus here will be on small and medium enterprises. 5, our music and film industries have shown positive signs and potential for growth and expansion. We will focus our attention initially on these 2 sectors, which we believe can, in the short term, provide employment and wealth creation for our youths, bearing in mind the youth bulge in our population and the current level of unemployment. Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, what I have outlined here is by no way exhaustive, nor have I attempted to provide it as the one-size-fits-all prescription. I, however, hope that I have been able to provide some insights into what we are doing and hope to do to develop our creative economy, and I hope to be able to learn from your experiences. Certainly, promoting creative economies is not only an answer to youth unemployment and inclusive growth, but also fosters national and global security and developing human relationships. And this is a responsibility not only of government, but of all. Thank you, and welcome to Sierra Leone, Africa's hidden paradise. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much, Mr. Bayuku Konte, for this interesting keynote address and giving us a very interesting insight also into the Sierra Leone experience. I already see some questions coming up, so if you want to give the microphone.
Thank you very much, Minister. My name is Ben. I'm from America. I'm working on a project in Liberia to develop specifically the music industry, but very much what you're discussing. In your points that you listed at the end, I was particularly interested for maybe some more thoughts on, in number 2, you mentioned law enforcement enforcing the copyright laws in Liberia, where rule of law is such a big challenge in general. How to really go about implementing enforcement of copyright violation is something that's particularly on my mind. And number 3, you mentioned SLIPA and developing markets, and then if you could elaborate that on a little further, I'd appreciate it. Okay. Thank you.
Well, Liberia is not very different from Sierra Leone. In fact, we are sister countries. Both countries really experienced a civil war, unfortunately. After the war, we quickly started working on trying to put our house in place, addressing the issue of the music industry. We noticed, of course, that many youths were coming up spontaneously to build themselves up on this particular sector. So we wanted to make sure that those who are involved in this industry get the best out of it. Because at the end of the day, what we realize was that some people, we are stealing their music and so on and so forth. So we had to work with there's a union, a national union of artists, to ensure that we know who are the artists and what they produce, and then give them exactly guidelines as to what we want them to produce, because we wanted to ensure that they preach the message of unity and peace, and development as well in the country. So we made it very clear that they have to be the point of reference that will ensure that only those who are the producers of music have to make money out of it, and that they have to discourage those who will steal from them. But also inform the police and all the other agencies that are responsible for making sure that there is some amount of law and order in the country, to ensure that we protect those who are producers of the music industry. So, yeah, and then we have Sleeper, which is the agency that is responsible for exporting our products. So they too have come in to ensure that they support, and politically, also financially, those potential young men and women who are in the industry, so that not only people in Sierra Leone can buy their product, but also people in the region can know about the products that we produce in terms of music. So we are working on in this particular direction, both at the level of working with the union, but also with the agency that is charged with the responsibility of promoting the music industry.
Any other questions? No?
Well, if no other question, may I quickly state that Sierra Leone, I know for most of you, Sierra Leone is being identified for the civil war that we had. Well, it ended in 2001, and since then we have been enjoying peace and stability. It's one of the most beautiful countries in the world, endowed with the finest, the cleanest, and the most beautiful beaches in the world, and a very rich ecotourism sites. We have tens of birds and butterflies, monkeys, pygmy hippos that are unique of Sierra Leone. But also, the people of Sierra Leone, according to tour operators, they say we are one of the most hospitable people in Africa. Very friendly, very, very helpful. And of course, in this moment, we are having the highest economic growth in West Africa. Fortunately, we are endowed with huge natural resources, about 39 different types of mineral resources, from diamonds to gold, bauxite, rutile, you name them. So it's an interesting place to visit. You will not regret it. And tour operators have started coming to see how stable and how interesting Sierra Leone is. So, as I said, please come.
I think we should all come to have a look for ourselves. Right?
Okay.
Before we have lunch, I would like to ask you to give us an extra round of applause for Minister Bayuku Konte.